On today's show, last season, the Dallas Mavericks saved their franchise. Everybody, front office, stars, coaches, ownership, everything. We'll tell you why in today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
You are Locked On Mavs.
Great, Rusty.
Your daily Dallas Mavericks podcast.
No one's dying.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Amazing.
Your team every day.
Still can't even help it.
And welcome. You're Locked On to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show. Make it Locked On Mavs your first listen today, where the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day on any podcast platform. Take us with you. Leave a 5-star review, like the video on YouTube, and comment anything below. Answer some of these fan questions, all kinds of good stuff today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sport stops sporting like we want them to, but this summer FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. Something for everybody every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And joining me from The Athletic, you've known him for a long time covering the Dallas Mavericks, the great Tim Cato. What you got for me, Tim?
Man, my microphone was dusty. My hair is uncut. My August is going along as any August for someone who works adjacent to the NBA should be, which is to say I haven't been doing too much. Glad to be here. Glad to do this little fan survey. This is my favorite exercise I do every year. I think I legitimately believe that. In terms of something consistently to bring up, I enjoy even the process of creating the questions to, just figuring out what do we need to ask? Like, what is relevant? How do you ask it? How do you go about, and we'll talk more about this. I love the methodology of it though. That's something I'll kind of chat about as we go through some of these questions. But yeah, I thought the results were interesting. We had more responses and than I think ever. I'd have to go back and look. But 2,000 is a lot of people. Maybe it's not scientific. There's going to be biases, but it's interesting. And I found this really interesting, as I do every year.
Yeah, he does this fan survey, which we talked about a lot a couple weeks ago, just asking a bunch of different questions. But it asked a bunch of different questions of Mavs fans. You go in, a lot of you answered questions. I noticed that there was one that was one of the questions was, how would you name Mark Cuban, say one word about Mark Cuban's tenure, and the word mixed came up 23 times, and that was the word I talked about on the show. So shout out any of you that used that word as well. But so we'll talk about all these different questions. But I think
you're influencing the results. Wow.
Yeah, all 23 of them.
Unbelievable. 23
Unbelievable. 2,000.
One word to sum up Mark Cuban's tenure: locked on.
What if we had done that? The write-in. Just make the write-in for every single one of them.
Kind of like how you have people go comment one word in the other shows comment sections on YouTube.
Oh yeah, just for fun, go comment on Locked On Suns. Hi, just do that. Just everybody. Go.
Unbelievable. I mean, hey, you got to go back to you got to go back to the fundamentals sometimes. To the it always works.
Go back to that well. Find what worked. So I think the Mavs saved their franchise. You look at the culmination of all the answers to all these questions, and one of the big ones that stands out is one of the first ones. And like you said, you've done this for a couple years. You've done this now for 5 years, I think.
5, yeah.
And so you look back at, and one of the first ones that is up there is excluding the 2011 championship. Obviously, put that one to the side. What's the best season in Mavericks history? And 51%, maybe it's some recency bias, 51% said it's this past season, the second best season in Dallas Mavericks history. After, would you say one of the worst seasons in Mavericks history, the season before?
Yeah, that's got to be the worst one based off expectations, based off how it felt, what it meant. I don't know, maybe not. Same for this one where I think there's more of a case that the second best season might have been the 1987-88 season, but we just don't have people who watch that live. And so I'll leave that for the old heads, the historians. I guess I wrote a book about the franchise's past history.
Got it somewhere on that show.
Yeah, it's up there. It's up around. We got these vertical boxes where you can't see anything, so. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a case for that, but I think there's absolutely a case. Why not last season was the best season? Why not 2 years ago was the worst season? These are perfectly justifiable titles, arbitrary titles that we can assign to them.
there's something triumphant about like having one of the worst seasons and then having one of the best seasons in franchise. Like it's almost as if last season being so terrible fueled how good we now feel about this past season. And even though they went to the finals and they won less games than they did in 2006. And maybe in 2006 you can go back and be like, well, it was the first finals in franchise history. That should be a momentous thing. We've learned that it was rigged in some ways, and the Mavs maybe should have been closer in that one. So maybe that one should have been. But my point in all this is that last season is widely considered one of the best, one of the top 2-3 seasons in Mavericks history. And this franchise was in a state of flux in a crazy, crazy way. One of the big ones was one of your questions is how much confidence do you have in Luka Doncic remaining in Dallas past the 2026 offseason, which is when his contract ends. After the season before last, so 2023, they missed the postseason entirely, tanked the last couple of games, all that. It was 19% had ranked 5, like the most confident. They're very confident. The highest one was 4 at 38%. Then 28% was 3, and so we're kind of like in that mode after that, where it was the first time that we all really looked at Luka, some of his answers after questions, saw him visibly frustrated, and said, is this going to go really badly, like really quick? And then flash forward to this past season, the survey you did, how confident are you that Luka will stay in Dallas past 2026? 51.7% said 5. Like the Mavericks, I think in just being as successful as they were, saved their franchise just by the confidence in keeping Luka. Do you think that the fans' confidence in Luka staying like matches what in reality is out there, or were they just worried?
Yeah, I think it was just worry. I think it was coming off the heels of everything, coming off the heels of the way that we were talking about Luka, talking about the way that he, really showed. I remember what I wrote back after that press conference. Now I guess a year plus ago, was just the idea that he was very aware of where he stood in the sense that he was a superstar and he had power. Not to fully undermine your point, because I think it's throughout this survey, it's shown the
Sure.
level of confidence, the increase in confidence. It was still fairly optimistic like that. 1 year ago, the survey 1 year ago, that question was the one that had the most optimism. There was a lot of people who were unsure about Nico Harrison. There was almost no confidence in Jason Kidd and in the direction of the franchise, stuff like that. There was still a lot of confidence that Luka was going to stay. About 60% of the people, were still saying, 4s or 5, which is, the second, it's a scale of least confidence to most confidence, 1, 2, 5. And still about 60% of the people, were at least, 4s and 5s. You're right that, the most confidence has jumped a lot, 1 year removed from that survey. The delta over 1 year has definitely increased, but there was still, nobody was panicking and thinking for sure Luka's out the door, but all the signs were there, and everything that happened this season was, righting the ship in a way that everybody knew it needed to be.
And it's just that Luka is confident in where the Mavericks are right now in a much more like confirmed way than he was at the end of the past season when they missed the postseason entirely. And so I think even in that, if they had another season like the one that they had in 2022-23, then maybe it becomes more real that we're like, oh man, like now we're really concerned about Luka. And so we were on this pendulum of like, all right, it's got to swing the other way again now, because if it doesn't, then all of a sudden a bunch of different things could happen. And one of those being the status of Luka on this team for the rest of his career or the rest of that contract, or even after that contract.
Yeah, and
so
it was a situation also where people were, I'm sure some people voting that they were confident he was going to stay. They were confident that he was going to sign that big extension. Maybe it wasn't confidence in his long-term future in Dallas. And this question, because of the way it was phrased, was specifically just, hey, is he going to re-sign in Dallas? Having confidence in that and having confidence that he was going to stay after that 1 year ago, understandably might have differed as well had I phrased or framed or added other questions, to that survey 1 year ago.
That's the journalist in you, just rethinking questions and making sure that you're posing them the right way. I mean, you're doing the real capital J work over there.
I'm doing like polling work, it's there's a reason. And I acknowledge this every time I do the survey that, like this is literally a science. And I know that, the way I'm doing it is not, at all points, 100% scientifically sound. There's going to be some biases within it. But again, 2,000 people replied. And, I think it's an interesting, just poll, just pulse, just to get the pulse of the fan base. I find it really fascinating every year.
We should do polling the way they do political polling, where you just get text all the time of like, your voice matters. You should reply to this poll, or we could do like the census, where you and I show up to people's doors and knock on the door. Hey, how many Mavericks games did you watch this year?
Yeah, I couldn't get the New York Times to sign off on paying a survey firm to do this. So I just had to fall back, rely on the trusty Google Forms. Next year I'm going to hire 2 interns. We're going to send them all throughout Dallas and get people to answer these questions. I like it.
We're going to do that. Coming up, I want to talk about why the Mavericks season was saved and why maybe the franchise was saved. We'll talk about Cuban selling the team. We'll talk about Nico Harrison making moves, Jason Kidd. The confidence of Jason Kidd is insane. Is it founded? We'll talk about that and more coming up.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Everyone, I say this every time I do this, but it's true. You listening, every single person listening to this has anxiety or things in your life that cause you to either stay up at night or cause you to question things or just have these questions just running through your mind over and over and over again. We all have those things. And sometimes you need somebody to talk to. Every time, you have those questions, you want things that can help you to get through those things. And I've had many in my life where I'm like, all right, I need somebody to just help me work through this situation. Therapy has helped. I've used BetterHelp in the past. If you're thinking about starting therapy yourself, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. You fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists whenever you like, because they know that you have to vibe with that person. You have to trust that person and feel like you can trust that person. And they're not going to take it personally or anything like that. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, listening every day. If you're watching on YouTube, my graphics just all went insane all at once. If you make your second listen today, Locked On NBA. I was on Locked On NBA yesterday with Pat, the designer. We talked all about the Larry Marketing deal and how that sends ripple effects throughout the rest of the NBA. And I got one big loser, and Pat doesn't agree that it's a loser. So go listen to Locked On NBA. Make that your second listen. All right, we're here with Tim Cato. He did a fan survey on The Athletic, NewYorkTimes.com/athletic. I guess is that how you say it now, or is it still? I guess it's still The Athletic.
I don't remember.
The URL says nytimes.com/athletic.
Yeah. We all shifted over. So.
Fan survey with a bunch of good questions that a lot of you answered, and I think the culmination of all of it is I think the Mavs saved their franchise in this past season. And one of those is Nico Harrison. Well, let's do Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd, the confidence in Jason Kidd, at least among fans, has gone through the roof. You go back to the 2022-23 season, and I will admit, I probably had some influence over this question because I was banging the drum on Jason Kidd being the reason for last season. 41%, that was the leading one, were number 2 confident. They had the second least amount of confidence in Jason Kidd. 13% had 1 confidence. They were just not confident at all. Fast forward to this past season, the past fan survey. The number 1 option at 60% was 4, 9% at 5, and only 0.5% at 1. It's insane to look at the difference between the two. Why do you think Jason Kidd earned so much confidence from fans?
I think the 4 was both what I expected, but it stood out that people were, on a scale of 1 to 5, that they overwhelmingly chose a 4. And to me, what that represents is you've had 2 great seasons here, and last season, made up for a lot of the concerns, but people were also like, we don't forget what happened 2 years ago. We don't forget how we felt. So it's cautious optimism. It's like last season was fantastic, and it was, especially throughout the playoffs. Jason Kidd was regularly, in his coaching staff was regularly out coaching, pretty much every opponent they faced up until Boston. And, that was much more about the rosters than any coaching decisions. And, it is Jason Kidd and his coaching staff. So if you're one of those fans out there who believes that, maybe Kidd is more of a figurehead, that, Sean Sweeney is a huge, has
shadow
such a
coach.
whole, just has a huge role or influence over the strategy. For what it's worth, I'll say I don't believe that. I think Sweeney's fantastic, but I genuinely believe that Jason Kidd is a very good coach. I think he has proven that time and time again. That's my understanding of what people in the organization feel. Like, this is not some situation where, Sweeney would leave and everything would be, terrible or go back to what it felt like, 2 seasons ago. But that's what the 4 represented to me. It's like, last season was fantastic. It felt like, that conference finals run of 2022, it proved and quieted a lot of the doubts. But the fact that it was 4, not 5, overwhelmingly, just indicated that people haven't totally forgotten, do remember how they felt. And it's a cautious, like, okay, go do it again, and then we're all back in maybe. But not quite there, despite how good everything went last season.
I think for a lot of Mavs fans, and this is definitely my experience, is that coming in, I was very wary of Jason Kidd, not having seen a lot of success before coming to the Mavericks. You had weird power grab situations in Milwaukee or Brooklyn or wherever, and you're like, okay, I'm cautiously going into this thinking, all right, we'll see what happens, but I don't expect to be a good coach. Then they make the Western Conference Finals. Then you're like, okay, I have some confidence in him. Then they missed the postseason completely, and all of that was kind of taken back down to 0. And so now he was starting at 0, or maybe negative in some people's eyes. And man, he has just completely turned around the confidence in fans. And I think he pulled a lot of the right levers, right? Like starting Derek Lively and doing that, and he didn't start him from day one, but he brought him in and played him from day one, and saw that was a guy that he could rely on and trust. And I think he pulled all the right levers with this team throughout the season. And I think fans saw that he did what he could with what he was given, because you go to one of the other questions, which is like, why did the Mavs lose in the finals? And one of the number one answers is Boston's roster, and then it was Dallas's roster. So they still think it's a roster talent problem. It was not, you didn't even put coaching in there, because I don't think anybody would think that it was just a coaching situation. But it's wild to see how much that shifted with Jason Kidd. If he had another season like he did in 2022-23, how would you think we'd be talking about Jason Kidd right now?
I mean, yeah, like people want him gone. Like everybody, the coaches, as they say, you can change coaches much easier than players. And if the season had not gone well, I don't think that the roster. I mean, it's so hard to speculate. Like, what's the scenario where the season doesn't go well last season? Does it involve all the trades? Is it, I find it hard to believe that, if Derek Lively had emerged like this, that there would be the possibility for, a season to go poorly. But yeah, absolutely. If the season was not as successful, if it was deemed to be less successful than it should have been, absolutely Jason Kidd would be the number one person receiving that flack. And but yeah, that's not the case. They outperformed, they overperformed. One quick thing, I just went back and checked the 2022 survey. So after Jason Kidd's first season, the conference finals run, people were more confident in Jason Kidd than they were in Nico Harrison after that season ended. And so, Nico actually rose a lot, even despite the catastrophic season. He actually, at least stayed the same, maybe rose a little bit. Jason Kidd plummeted, and now it's both of them rising, but more apportionate to where they were last season, where Nico Harrison was a bunch of 3s and 4s, and he rose almost overwhelmingly. That he's someone that everybody has the utmost confidence, total confidence in, and I think Jason Kidd had a higher boost in confidence, but because he started so low, it's just not the same level of confidence that people are saying that they have in Nico Harrison.
Yeah, coming up, the confidence in Nico Harrison has risen a ton, and I want to get into that and why that happened. And then I want to talk about Mark Cuban and him selling the team. People don't believe the reasons Mark Cuban stated he sold the team. Should we? We'll talk about all that and more coming up.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook has all kinds of props and odds, spreads, lines, things like that you can use to get in on the action. Got the Olympics. Just watched France beat Germany. That was kind of crazy. So you can go and see what odds they have. USA, I think, is playing as we're talking right now. All kinds of stuff that you can use to get in on the action there. USA on the women's side is 17.5 point favorite over Australia. France is a favorite over Belgium. France on both sides of the bracket. I don't know if we should maybe put more money down on France because they're making their way to the finals. But the USA women are minus 3,500. to win gold. France women at plus 2,300. For the men, those odds are locked right now, but you can go back, check all the time, see what changes all the time on FanDuel. They got boost and bonus daily, so go back, check it out at FanDuel.com.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
We're not going home yet.
Thanks, everyone, for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs. Tim Cato's not going home yet. He's staying here because we got to talk about this Mavs fan survey that he's been doing. And the confidence in Nico Harrison that you mentioned. We talked about Jason Kidd. The confidence in him from fans is just gone through the roof now. It's risen very, very far. Very few fans have a 1-rated confidence in Nico Harrison, which I found wild. The confidence in Nico Harrison after the 2022-23 season, 13% were at a 5. 53% were at a 4. So it was still, like you said, pretty good in that spot. But after this season, 70% are at a 5. 5-level confidence in Nico Harrison and 28% at 4. So basically all of it, a 4 or a 5 confidence in Nico Harrison. How did he earn that from fans?
Real quick, randomly, this isn't going to come up, but I just wanted to say it. As we're talking about, almost no one has a 1 in him. One way that I kind of measure, where there are a bunch of trolls who came in, people who were not Mavs fans,
Sure.
and they're coming in and they're, sometimes I'll see like a Twitter poll and there's 4 options, and this is a bad admission for me, a journalist. I will try to pick the one that I think is going to have the least percentage, just for fun. And you have to vote
you can't see
the percentages.
You can't see you can't see the results until you hit a button. So
there was one question at the very end: how many games are the Mavs going to win? Not one single person in this entire survey selected the lowest option. 40, I think it was fewer than 45 games that they're going to win next season. Not even one, which is that's the trolliest thing that you can do. Oh, well, they're going to suck. So I actually have some
45,
confidence in the survey. Yeah, I have some confidence that this was taken in good faith, because if there's a bunch of trolls coming in and, just like me on Twitter polls, just trying to do the worst possible option. It's not like I even filtered any out, it's just 0, 2,000 responses, more than 2,000, 0. And so to that point, there are, a very, very, very small percentage of people that, are against the majority, but legitimately don't have faith. And, for Nico Harrison, maybe it's a Kyrie thing, as good as Kyrie was, maybe there's some people who still just don't believe in the business of Kyrie Irving or, employing him, stuff like that.
Sure.
But overwhelmingly, oh my God, these are, what's the president who had, these are these are Bush Iraq boosted popularity numbers. I shouldn't bring that up on your podcast. I know we're not doing politics.
Are you sure you didn't have any hanging chads on your fan survey?
Yeah, and I don't like saying that either. But we're gonna move on from George Bush and thoughts on him. But yeah, Nico Harrison is beloved by the franchise right now. He has just made move after move after move, and I think a huge reason why he's beloved is not because every single thing has worked, but because even when things don't work, he adjusts and he moves on. I thought Grant Williams, I think that instilled confidence, because he took a swing that everybody thought was going to work. It didn't work, and he moved on from it right away. And objectively, nobody's out here saying that, the Grant Williams signing was a success, but the way he went about doing that and then recognizing it wasn't working and moving on from it, I think that is something that has got it, it's got into the brains of Mavs fans when they think about Nico. And you don't only look at all the great moves he has made, and he has objectively made a bunch of great moves. One of the questions I almost put in there and decided it was just it just didn't feel like it was worthy, but what was the best move Nico has made over the past 18 months? And I kind of looked at it and I'm like, what does best even mean? How would I even select this? He's made a bunch of good moves, and, we don't need to know which one is best to know that, these have been moves that have helped Dallas win. And so all of that, and the, just the certainty and the confidence to make moves, to pull the trigger, I think has led to him being, pretty much the figure in the franchise, outside Luka Doncic that, this survey shows, and that the fan base probably has the most confidence in.
He's taking risks. I think that's one of the things that has really stood out. I mean, you go back to the first big move he made was trading Porzingis. Like, oh, we're trading this guy that everybody thought was going to be the second star, and getting Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans' contract back. Like, that was a risk right there. It ended up paying off and ended up working out. Takes a risk on, Derek Jones Jr. He ends up paying off in a huge way. Dante Exum coming back to the NBA. He takes a risk on him. Small one, but still brought him in. Kyrie Irving in a way. And you mentioned the Grant Williams one. We'll talk about this tomorrow, but after the 2023 season, and they bring in Grant Williams, the question was who could play 25 minutes in a playoff game? Grant Williams, besides Luka and Kyrie, Grant Williams was the number one receiver of votes from fans at 93.7%. That fans thought that he could play in a playoff series. And so fans were real confident in Grant Williams. And then you said it, they move on from him. Now he's taking a risk with the Klay Thompson thing. Bringing Dinwiddie back, I guess, is somewhat of a risk. Replacing Derek Jones Jr. with Grimes or with Najee Marshall, guys that are maybe a little more unproven, things like that. He took a risk with Lively and like not getting another center besides him and just saying, hey, I think this guy can play. Maybe that was a risk that he kind of stumbled into, but it's wild. Where does that confidence from Nico Harrison to take risks like that? Where does that come from, you think?
For Nico,
there's no I think job security. Like, hey, I've got to be careful with these moves. I just sent a pick swap for Grant Williams and I got to make it work.
I mean, I think this is I could probably give like a 10-minute answer on this. I'll keep it shorter. I think it probably helps that he, came from outside basketball, and, he is somebody who has the confidence of, not coming up through the ranks, that he was put in this role to be a decision maker from day one. There was never any, he's lowest rung in the front office and just offering opinions, and then, gets, into the middle role where his opinions are valued, but he's not the decision. He's always been the decision maker since day one. And that's, something that he, I guess was to some extent at Nike. He certainly, yeah, he was someone who made decisions, different type of decisions, but that's always what he's been tasked to do for a lot of his career, and that's how he's been. And so, again, this is probably an answer I could flesh out and to a much larger extent, but yeah, I'm sure that has to have some impact over the way that he is, just taken this job, and as you said, just been immediately willing to make big swings right away without a lot of hesitation.
I can just go back and sell shoes and whatever if this doesn't work out,
Yeah.
Then you can do that. One of the last ones that I found really interesting and kind of like, I think one of the things that helped the Mavericks and has helped Nico Harrison is the more streamlined decision-making tree with the new ownership. I do think that has helped with. It seems like Mark Cuban has stepped out of the way. He's obviously stepped out of the way as main governor and owner and all that. But one of the questions in here that you asked fans, what do you believe was the primary reason Cuban sold the team? 53% said his personal finances, so getting that bag. 22% said his future political ambitions. 15% said prioritizing family, and like just about 10% said declining local rights. And the bottom two, you mentioned in the piece, 15% for prioritizing family, 10% for declining local rights, are the two reasons that he actually has named specifically for why he sold the team. Why do you think no one believes in the answers that Cuban gave?
Yeah, so two methodology things here. I tend to not ask questions on these surveys that should be better answered by a journalist like me. And so there was a reason that I went against that. It does feel like there's a void of a prevailing narrative reason for why Mark actually sold the team. He has given two reasons. He talked a lot early on about just the idea that local revenue, TV market, all of that stuff. He talked about that early on. And then the NBA went and signed, a mega new national TV deal. Again, that does not invalidate the fact that the local TV revenue is drying up, but it does change the fact that, all of a sudden, the salary cap's going to keep going up. There's no doubt about that, no matter what happens on a local level. And lately, he's talked more about his family and the idea that, his kids don't know whether they would want to take over. They're not old enough to know whether they would take over for him, stuff like that. Again, just not the most convincing answer, because just a few years ago, he said he would never sell the franchise. Right. And so what I was curious, and the other methodology thing is, I considered making this a checkbox where you could choose multiple answers. And the truth is probably that the family stuff is a little bit to do with it. And the truth is that the local revenue is, TV revenue does have a little bit to do with it. But I wanted to get, in this void of a reason that we all agree on. I wanted to get the pulse of what the fans felt truly was the reason. And almost everybody agreed that, yeah, it was finances. For whatever that means exactly, it had to do with the fact that he needed to sell the team because he just could not finance or afford the type of spending that is required in the modern NBA. And look, again, this is an answer, this is a question, this is a thing best answered by a journalist. And we've all kind of answered it. And I can't give you like the definitive reason of this was his finances and this is the reason that he sold. But I can tell you that the view around the NBA was that he was the, least cash flush owner in the entire NBA. That has been the impression of Mark over the past half decade or so. Maybe a little bit more recent than that, maybe the past 3 or 4 years. That is something that people around the league have felt. And so, again, I can't tell you with 100% certainty, like this was the financial circumstances of Mark Cuban behind the scenes and he had to sell for X reason or Y reason. Again, I do think that there was, at least 3 of these factors. I'm not really sure the politics factored into it, but maybe I just might not know that one either. But I do think that it was a combination of things. But ultimately, I think the fans are intuitive to end up selecting his own personal finances as the top option. I think that is the most intuitive choice out of these 4 if you only had to pick one, based off my understanding.
We also just love to believe that people don't say the actual reason. We love a conspiracy or like there's something else, there's something deeper, like something you're not telling us.
And also, why would he say that?
What?
Why would he come out and like, well, guys, I don't have a lot of money,
cash,
so yeah, it's just. But if he said he was never going to sell like 3 years ago.
Right. Right.
How do you go from never selling to selling? I do feel like the 2 reasons he said are just not convincing. I'm with the fans on this one.
It is interesting, and I do think that the fans just latched on to like, all right, it's got to be something else. So the personal finance is the most believable out of the other options.
And Mark, he retweeted the results of this, so maybe that was his way of agreeing. I don't think it was. That had nothing to do with it. I think he just enjoys this exercise, and and it is a really cool way to kind of get a pulse of the fandom. Please, Mark, if this somehow gets back to you, I'm not actually saying that. And I'm not actually saying that you sold because of your finances. I know it was a multifaceted reason. I'm just saying that it was very interesting to see the fans latch on to being at least a bit more than, what he said publicly.
Cato speaking to an audience of 1 right now.
Things you got to do when you've been doing this long.
The capital J journalist, Tim Cato.
Don't aggregate this.
I'm going to aggregate this. The fan survey, you can go read it on The Athletic. There's all kinds of, you can go back and look at the old ones too, like the 2022, 2021, all back to 2020, which I'm sure is wild. I didn't look at that one. Tomorrow we'll talk about a couple other ones. Klay Thompson, Derek Lively being the 3rd best player on the Mavericks. We'll talk about all that tomorrow. Guys, thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show. Again, back tomorrow. Yes. Oh, one more thing tomorrow. Peace out. Boom.